Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So I thought today I might take a look at finishing off my read-through, comparison read-through first and second edition AD&D's stats. And so we're moving on now to wisdom and then charisma. So there's my first edition player's handbook. I really love that cover. Easily is great. I am more partial to this cover. I know that's going to bother some of you, but that's okay. I'm more partial to this cover than I am to the demon cover. That's just me. But seeing either one brings back all these memories, so it's cool. So I'm going to move over here to wisdom. All right. So here's what it says in first edition AD&D Player's Handbook. It says, wisdom is a composite term for the character's enlightenment, judgment, willpower, and to a certain extent intuitiveness. It has a certain effect on saving throws against some magical attack modes. It is of utmost importance to clerics, their major characteristic, and those with wisdom of 16 or greater add 10% to earned experience. Furthermore, clerics with exceptional wisdom 16 or greater also gain bonus spells over and above the number they are normally able to use. The two tables which follow detail the information pertaining to the effects of wisdom. Now, just for a second, if you remember my intelligence video the last time, we also pretty quickly adopted this wisdom table 2 adjustments for clerics for bonus spells directly to our magic users as well. You can see the table here in table 1, starting at an ability score of 3 all the way to 18, and you get your magical attack adjustment. That adjustment applies to the saving throw for your character in question, the penalty for low wisdom or the bonus for high wisdom being used to alter the result of the die roll accordingly. The adjustment applies only to mental attack forms involving will force, i.e. beguiling, charming, fear, hypnosis, illusion, magic jarring, mass charming, phantasmal forces, possession, rulership, suggestion, telepathic attack, etc. So obviously this would also apply to those psionic effects that actually give a saving throw, and I believe one of them would be psionic blast if I'm not mistaken. That's towards the back of the book here, because first edition advanced D&D had the psionic system in the back. It was the first time that it showed up to my understanding. Then you have Wisdom Table 2, the adjustment for clerics, starting at 9 with no bonus spells and a 20% chance of spell failure, all the way up to 18, where you got, and this is cumulative down the table, so you got 2 first, 2 second, a third, and a fourth if you had an 18. And your spell failure percentage was 0. Starting at 13, you got that first level spell, and then it cumulatively added down the table. At a 17, it says it's a minimum wisdom score for use of 6th level spells, and 18 is the minimum for 7th level spell use. Notes regarding Wisdom Table 2. Spell bonus indicates the number of additional spells the cleric is entitled to according to Wisdom score. Note that these spells are only available when the cleric is entitled to spells of that applicable level. Bonus spells are cumulative, as I said, so a cleric of 14 wisdom is entitled to 2 first, one with 15 would be 2 first and 1 second, etc. Then chance of failure states the percentage chance of failure clerics with low wisdom risk when casting spells. To determine if a spell fails, percentile dice are rolled, and if the number generated is equal to or less than the number shown for failure, the spell is expended but has absolutely no effect whatsoever. For additional information regarding clerics, see the section pertaining to clerics as characters given hereafter, character classes. All right, so we'll leave that one open. Take a look here at the advanced D&D Player's Handbook for 2nd edition and see what they have to say for wisdom. All right, so wisdom describes a composite of the character's enlightenment, judgment, guile, willpower, common sense, and intuition. It can affect the character's resistance to magical attack. It is the prime requisite of priests, and here's where they changed from cleric to priest. Those with a wisdom score of 16 or higher gain a 10% bonus to earned experience points. Clerics, druids, and other priests with wisdom scores of 13 or higher also gain bonus spells over and above the number they are normally allowed to use. Magical defense adjustment on the table here, listed at table 5 here. Applies to saving throws against magical spells that affect the mind. Beguiling, charm, fear, hypnosis, illusions, possession, suggestion, etc. So you can see there, first of all, that they changed the word from cleric to priest. I don't know how you particularly feel about that. I prefer the term cleric, but that's just me, because that differentiation there is going to matter when you get to second edition, because they break priests out into subcategories, the cleric and the druid. And once they do that, they also break spells into their godly attached spheres of influence from which the spells come. That alters the course of how spells are given. They're no longer spells that are based, like in first edition, off of a cleric, a magic user, or a druid. Now it's spheres, and you have to determine what spheres your priest gets, and therefore what spells that they can cast. It's a different way to do it. I kind of prefer the first edition way because you have a unique list in that regard, but that's just me. You might prefer it the other way, and that's fine too. And the complete handbooks furthered these concepts, of course, too. Also notice when it says here the spell attack adjustment is for, in first edition it says beguiling, charming, fear, hypnosis, illusion, magic, jarring, mass charming, phantasmal forces, possession, rulership, suggestion, and telepathic attack. Okay, here it just says beguiling, charm, fear, hypnosis, illusions, possession, suggestion, etc. It doesn't say anything about telepathic attack at all. It also doesn't say anything about magic jarring. Magic jarring is not like exactly a thing in second edition. It is, but it isn't. If I decide to go and cover the spells, you'll kind of see that, and you can always put something in the comments to further discuss that. We can do that, that type of thing. But telepathic attack, by the time second edition came along, most people tended to not play with psionics in the first edition game. I know it was really, really rare for us to do so, but it was a thing. I think if you read Salvatore's Cleric Quintet, for example, psionics is a big thing for Catterley, his cleric in those books in the Cleric Quintet. And I think that's really cool how he writes that out. You can tell that he comes from a first edition AD&D background and the psionic system accordingly. But by the time second edition comes around, that becomes an optional system. It's not in the player's handbook anymore. And it becomes something part of what are called the brown books, or the splat books, if you want to call them that. It was the complete book of psionics, or the psionics handbook, and other books that kind of accompanied that, as well as the Dark Sun campaign setting. Psionics were a really big deal there, but otherwise it was separated away from the regular player's handbook information. So that's why Wisdom here does not mention that in second edition. It goes on to say that, pertaining to magical defense adjustment, that these bonuses and penalties are applied automatically without any conscious effort from the character. Then bonus spells indicates the number of additional spells a priest, and only a priest, is entitled to because of their extreme wisdom. Note that these spells are available only when the priest is entitled to spells of the appropriate level. Bonus spells are cumulative, so just like the other chart. Chance of spell failure, exactly like the other chart. No differences, just a little bit wordier, but otherwise no differences. Then there also is something called spell immunity, which you will notice is not on the first edition tables. And in fact, here, spell immunity didn't happen until after you broke past 18. And this blue box here, and all these tables have these blue boxes because this is the exceeding of the 18 and what it would be like to go above an 18. Okay. In first edition, you saw that in deities and demigods in some of their stats, and maybe in Dragon Magazine they talked about that to some extent. Excuse me. But in second edition, now they're all included in the tables. Perhaps they're included so that you have the information readily available to you, or perhaps this is a level of power creep that's coming into the game. You decide for yourself what that consists of and why. But spell immunity, it gives those extremely wise characters complete protection from certain spells or spell-like abilities. and magical items as listed. These immunities are cumulative, so that a character with a wisdom of 23 is immune to all listed spells up to and including those listed on the 23 row. To have a character with anything beyond 18 is just absolutely insane to me, but I guess you could have it. Like, for example, if there was a magical book that you found, like a Tome of Wisdom, that would raise you above an 18 and it would be allowed by your dungeon master, then you could do that. Various other things that could give that to you, that's fine. We never had anything crazy like that. I did have a magic user one time who did have a 19, but that was it. And then when Drow became a thing that you could play in 2nd edition, we had Drow with 19 dexes, that kind of a thing. But other than that, we did not exceed the 18 scores. All right, moving on. Let's move on to the last ability score, which is Charisma. 1st edition says this: Charisma is the measure of the character's combined physical attractiveness, persuasiveness, and personal magnetism. A generally non-beautiful character can have a very high charisma due to strong measures of the other two aspects of the charisma. It is important to all characters, as it has an effect on dealings with others, principally non-player characters, mercenary hirelings, prospective retainers, and monsters. It absolutely dictates the total number of henchmen a character is able to retain. It affects loyalty of all hirelings and retainers. It is the key to leadership. The following table expresses the facts regarding charisma scores, ranging again from 3 to 18. Maximum number of henchmen at 3 would be 1, with a minus 30% loyalty base and a minus 25% reaction adjustment, all the way to an 18, which would be 15 henchmen plus 40% loyalty base and plus 35% reaction adjustment. Okay, notes on the chart you can see for a 12, that's the maximum charisma for a half-orc. And it's it only applies to respect to non-orcs and non-half-orcs. Okay. And then on a 16, that's the maximum charisma for a dwarf character, and only applies with respect to non-dwarves. Okay. All right. The note regarding the table: the maximum number of henchmen states the number of non-player characters who will serve as permanent retainers of the player character. It does not affect the number of mercenary soldiers, men-at-arms, servitors, and similar persons in the pay of the character. Loyalty base simply shows the subtraction from or addition to the henchmen's and other servitors' loyalty scores. Reaction adjustment indicates the penalty or bonus due to the character because of charisma in meeting and dealing with persons and creatures encountered. For example, the character might encounter a basically neutral, intelligent creature and seek to converse in order to gain some advantage. If the charisma of the character is low, he or she will be working under a handicap, which will have to be overcome by generous offers and gifts if a chance of success is hoped for. On the other hand, if the character's charisma score is high, he or she will begin negotiations from a strong starting position due to their charm and magnetism. All right, moving on to 2nd edition. 2nd edition charisma says the score measures a character's persuasiveness, personal magnetism, and ability to lead. It is not a reflection of physical attractiveness, although attractiveness certainly plays a role. So there's a divergence there. In 1st edition, it was combined physical attractiveness, and here it's not really a reflection of that. It is important to all characters, but especially those who must deal with non-player characters, NPCs, mercenary hirelings, retainers, and intelligent monsters. It dictates the total number of henchmen a character can retain and affects the loyalty of henchmen and hirelings and retainers. Maximum number of henchmen on the table we'll see in a moment states the number of non-player characters who will serve as permanent retainers of the player character. It does not affect the number of mercenary soldiers, men-at-arms, servitors, or other persons in the pay of the character. Loyalty base shows the subtraction from or addition to the henchmen's and other servitors' loyalty scores, as in the DMG, and this is crucial during battles when morale becomes important. Reaction adjustment indicates the penalty or bonus due to the character because of charisma when dealing with non-player characters and intelligent creatures. For example, Wrath encounters a centaur, a centaur. Sorry, I hope he doesn't encounter a scimitar. But Wrath encounters a centaur, an intelligent creature. Wrath's charisma is only 6, so he's starting off with 1 strike against him. He probably should try to overcome this slight handicap by making generous offers of gifts or information. So then you see the table here. This is the ability score starting at 1. That'd be a huge amount of penalty. If you have to roll 3 or 4d6 and get a 1, you'd have some penalties there in play. But it's 0 henchmen, -8 loyalty base, -7 reaction adjustment. Because here in first edition, the loyalty base and reaction adjustment were done on percentile dice, and here they are not. You can look at that up for yourself to determine what they are given for, or how they are done. All the way up to an 18 would be 15 henchmen, a +8 loyalty base, and a +7 reaction adjustment. Now, optional racial adjustment. If your DM is using this rule, your character's apparent charisma may be altered when dealing with beings of different races. These alterations are given in Chapter 2 here on page 20, after the different player character races have been explained. Okay? All right, so there's some interesting differences between the ability score readings and how you might apply them, use them, be penalized by them, be given bonuses from them, and the descriptions thereof, and what they might apply to across both of these editions. I spent the majority of my time playing in second edition. However, we spent a lot of time utilizing things from first edition in our second edition game. But slowly as time went by, as the game changed, it kind of moved to like a 2.5, which was skills and powers. That was kind of slowly adopted, unfortunately, because that's more power gaming, in my opinion. Only in my opinion, of course, but it was in my opinion, and I saw that happen a lot. A lot of players came with that. There was a lot more arguments at the table. Even in second edition with all the splat book stuff, there was a lot more arguments at the table than there ever were in first edition, or in BECME, or in BX. And I think because that pertains to the more and more rules you add, the more and more options you give, the more and more wiggle room that you allow into the game, the further it takes you away from a style of game that first edition AD&D was designed to be as, where it was you, the player, creating your character, but you were much more important than the thing on the paper. As time went on, it became the thing on the paper started to pick up importance and started to matter more when you played. And there was more and more of an emphasis on the things on the sheet, and less emphasis on your role-playing and designing to play it at a level of verisimilitude, like as in, playing pretend, or when I was growing up in the 70s, playing Cowboys and Indians, quote unquote, or G.I. Joe in the ditch, and then imagining that at a little bit different level. It kind of started to step away from that as you move to second edition. I know second edition's design goals were to kind of listen to the fans and to kind of better put together the AD&D systems rules and mechanics in more of a formulaic and better laid out way. But in the process, I think some things got lost, and this is, again, just my personal opinion. Because I love second edition and I played it the most, I get that. But I think slowly things begin to change. Like I said, once you get to skills and powers, then when you move from skills and powers to third edition, it's definitely starting to get pretty out of control in that regard. Then 3.5 is crazy. And then Pathfinder went really crazy, even more so in that direction. And then fourth edition, that my personal opinion is that's just a glorified board game. It's not a tabletop role-playing game. But again, that's just my opinion. All of these are just my opinions. You play however you want, have fun however you want to have it. But since we were doing this comparison contrast read, I thought you might like to hear my opinions about it as we're kind of going through it. I may come back to the first and second edition conversations later on down the line. I'm going to start moving in direction now towards something else that I really want to cover on the channel quite a little bit, because I'm really quite into it right now. I'm intimately connected with a lot of people in it. and the publisher, and I'm going to be hopefully being able to get my ability to run the system for several other people online in different groups, as well as perhaps Gen Con in 2024. We'll see. I'm really looking forward to all of that. But that is Dragonbane from Free League. I've looked at it a couple of little times on the channel. I'm going to go back and look at it in a little bit more detail, and I'm hoping to have a guest on with me on the channel here soon, so that we can kind of go over it together, because he also really likes the system, and I hope you look forward to that being on the channel as well. I've hoped you've looked forward to and enjoyed these little tidbits of reading across the 2 editions about the ability scores. And like I said, maybe we'll get back to that and we'll do some more reading across the editions, because I think just hearing these read out, looking at them again after all this time, you can see some differences and some things that cause them to begin to diverge from one another as they still stay along a similar path so far. So I hope you've liked that. If you do, give me a like, a sub, thumbs up. I really, really appreciate that. It pushes it out to more people so they get a chance to have it in their feeds, and it really helps to grow the channel. I really appreciate all of my subscribers. Thank you all again for tuning in and for commenting. Please leave a comment. We can have some community discussion. Pick apart some things in the video that you liked or didn't like. We can talk about that. As always, be civil, be friendly. Definitely family friendly. Like I always say, if you put anything in there that's not family friendly, I'll just delete it, because that's what my channel is about as well, because I am a conservative Christian believer, and so that stuff doesn't need to be on there as far as I'm concerned. We can have good gaming conversation without all of the foulness and foul language and agendas and all this other junk. All right? So again, thanks a lot. I appreciate you guys. Take care, prosper, God bless, good gaming. Later.